Welcome to my channel. Let me ask you something. Have you ever wondered how one small mistake can change a person's life forever? Today, I'm going to tell you a story, a gripping English crime story. It's not just a story, it's also a lesson in life, language, and human nature. So, listen carefully till the end, because every chapter has a clue, and every clue will bring us closer to the truth. Chapter 1. The Quiet Town. Riverside was a small, quiet town. It was the kind of place where people left their doors open and said hello to everyone they met. The air was clean, and the streets were lined with small shops and green trees. Nothing bad ever happened there. People felt safe. They believed that crime only happened in big cities. But one morning, everything changed. It was a Tuesday. The sun had just come up, and the baker was putting fresh bread in the window. Suddenly, the peace was broken. Someone shouted near the main street, "Call the police. Mr. Collins is hurt." Within minutes, the whole town gathered outside the old antique shop. Mr. Collins, the shop owner, was lying on the floor, unconscious. The shop was a mess. Glass broken, boxes open, old clocks and paintings scattered everywhere. Everyone started whispering. Who could have done this? Mr. Collins was well known in Riverside. He was kind but private. People often said he had lived in the town for more than 30 years, but no one really knew where he came from. His shop was full of beautiful old things, silver coins, watches, and paintings. Some were very expensive. Now, many of those things were gone. When the police arrived, Detective Harris stepped out of the car. He was tall, calm, and spoke slowly, as if every word mattered. He looked around carefully. Every crime tells a story, he said quietly. We just have to learn how to read it. Among the people watching was Emma, a young journalist from the local newspaper. She had just finished her English degree and wanted to write real stories, not just weather reports or cooking columns. This was her chance. As the police took notes, Emma noticed something shiny on the ground. She bent down and picked it up. It was a small silver button. She didn't know why, but it felt important. She looked around. No one else had seen it. She slipped it into her pocket, thinking, maybe this button will tell me the story no one else can see. And she was right. That small silver button was the beginning of a mystery that would change Riverside forever. Chapter 2. The Button. The next morning, Emma couldn't stop thinking about the silver button. It was small, shiny, and smooth, but something about it felt strange. It wasn't like the buttons people in Riverside usually wore. It looked expensive, maybe part of a uniform. So she decided to take it to Detective Harris. When she arrived at the police station, the detective was sitting at his desk, reading a file. He looked up and smiled slightly. Ah, Miss Emma, you were at the crime scene yesterday, weren't you? Emma nodded and showed him the button. I found this outside Mr. Collins's shop, she said. Harris took the button carefully, turning it in his hand. Sometimes, he said slowly, the smallest things tell the biggest truths. He stood up and called another officer to check the button's design. A few minutes later, the officer returned, looking surprised. Sir, he said, this button belongs to a police uniform. The room went silent for a moment. Emma blinked. A police uniform? You mean someone from the police might be involved? Detective Harris didn't answer directly. He just said, we must not jump to conclusions. But yes, this kind of button isn't sold to the public. He placed the button in a small evidence bag. Emma watched carefully, her heart beating faster. A crime in their peaceful town was already shocking, but if a policeman was part of it, that was even worse. Emma left the station with more questions than answers. She decided to talk to people in town, to listen and observe. Maybe someone had seen something strange, but when she asked around, she noticed something else. The town had changed. People who usually smiled now looked nervous. They whispered when she passed by. Everyone had an opinion, but no one had proof. That evening, as Emma walked home, the streetlights flickered. The road was empty, and the night was cold. She pulled her coat tight and quickened her steps. Then she heard it, soft footsteps behind her. She turned around. No one was there. She tried to laugh it off, but the sound came again. Someone was following her. Chapter 3. The Secret Visitor. That night, Emma hardly slept. Every sound outside her window made her sit up. She couldn't stop thinking about the footsteps behind her. Maybe it was her imagination, but deep inside, she knew it wasn't. Someone had been there, watching, following. The next evening, as Emma was making tea, she heard a soft knock at the door. For a moment, she froze. No one usually visited her at night. She walked slowly to the door and opened it just a little. A young man stood there. His hair was messy, his face pale, and his eyes full of fear. Are you Emma? He asked. In a low voice. Yes, she said carefully. Who are you? My name is Daniel, he whispered. Please, can I come in? I don't have much time. Something in his voice sounded honest, desperate. She nodded and let him in. He looked around quickly, as if checking the windows. Then he said, I know something about the robbery at Mr. Collins's shop. Emma's heart jumped. What do you know? She asked. Daniel took a deep breath. It's not just a robbery. There's something hidden in that shop, something that doesn't belong to Mr. Collins, and someone will do anything to keep it secret. Emma leaned forward. What is it? But Daniel shook his head. I can't tell you yet. I shouldn't even be here. They'll find me. Who will find you? She asked. He opened his mouth to answer, but just then there was a noise outside, the sound of a car door closing. Daniel's face went white. They're here, he whispered. He ran to the back door, opened it, and disappeared into the darkness. Emma stood still, her hands shaking. She didn't even know who they were. She looked outside, but the street was empty again. The only sound was the wind moving through the trees. The next morning, she went to the police station to tell Detective Harris what had happened. But before she could finish her story, he looked at her seriously and said, Emma, I was just about to call you. The young man you mentioned, Daniel, has disappeared. Chapter 4. The Hidden Room. Detective Harris listened carefully as Emma told him everything about Daniel's visit. When she finished, he looked thoughtful. So, he said, he mentioned something hidden inside the shop. Emma nodded. Yes, he said, it doesn't belong to Mr. Collins. Harris stood up slowly. Then we need to take another look. Later that afternoon, they went back to the antique shop. It was quiet now. The police tape still hung across the door, moving a little in the wind. Inside, the air smelled of dust and old wood. Everything was just as it had been, broken glass on the floor, empty shelves and boxes scattered everywhere. Emma walked around, touching things carefully. She thought about what Daniel said, something hidden inside. But where could it be? Detective Harris examined the walls, the shelves, and even the ceiling. Then he stopped and looked down. Emma, he said softly, come here. He was standing near a small carpet in the corner. He pulled it aside, and underneath, they saw a wooden floor with one loose plank. Harris took out a small tool and lifted the plank carefully. Beneath it was a dark, narrow space. Emma bent down and gasped. Inside was a small hidden room. It was no bigger than a closet, but it was filled with strange things, old letters tied with string, a broken clock, and a small metal box with a lock on it. Everything was covered in dust, as if it had been there for years. The detective picked up the clock and looked at it closely. The glass was cracked, and the hands were stopped at exactly 11:45, the time of the robbery. Interesting, he said quietly. Maybe this clock saw more than we think. Emma opened one of the letters. It was written in old handwriting and signed with just one letter, D. The letter spoke about guilt, secrets, and money. I can't forgive you, it said. You took everything from me. Emma looked at Harris. Do you think these letters were from Daniel? Maybe, he said. Or maybe from someone else who wanted revenge. They both stared at the metal box. It was locked, heavy, and silent. Emma felt her heart beat faster. She didn't know it yet, but inside that box was the truth that could destroy everything and everyone in Riverside. Chapter 5. The Truth at 11:45. Emma couldn't stop staring at the metal box. It was old, heavy, and locked tight. Detective Harris tried to open it gently with a small tool, and after a few minutes, the lock finally clicked. Inside, there were papers, photographs, and a few old coins. But one photo caught Emma's attention immediately. It was a picture of Mr. Collins standing next to a woman and a small boy. The boy looked familiar. His eyes, his face, it was Daniel. Emma felt her breath catch. Detective. She said softly, Daniel is Mr. Collins' son. Harris looked at the picture carefully. Yes, he said. It seems Mr. Collins had a son he never told anyone about. Maybe he wanted to hide that part of his life. They looked through the papers and found old bank records showing that Mr. Collins had once been part of a business that ended badly. One of his partners had gone to jail, and one had disappeared. Emma remembered the letter signed with D. Maybe Daniel's mother had been hurt by whatever happened in that business. Harris said quietly, Daniel might have wanted justice, not money. He probably wanted to show the truth to everyone. Emma nodded. But if Daniel didn't hurt Mr. Collins, then who did? They went over everything again, the silver button, the letters. The clock stopped at 11:45. Then Harry suddenly looked serious. Emma, do you remember the button? It belonged to a police uniform. Yes, she said. Well, he continued. There's something else. The fingerprints on the metal box belong to Officer Reed. Emma felt a chill. Officer Reed, but he was helping with the case. Harris nodded slowly. Sometimes the person who hides the truth is the one standing closest to it. They decided to confront Reed quietly. The detective sent for him, and Reed arrived at the station, calm and polite as always. But when Harris placed the metal box and the photo on the table, Reed's face changed. He looked pale, his hands shaking. He tried to speak but couldn't. Emma looked at him and said softly, It was you, wasn't it? You hurt Mr. Collins. Reed closed his eyes. Yes, he whispered. But you don't understand. It wasn't supposed to happen. The truth was finally beginning to show itself, and it was darker than anyone had imagined. Chapter 6. Shadows of the Past. The confession hung in the air, like smoke heavy, bitter, and impossible to escape. Officer Reed sat in silence, his eyes fixed on the floor. Detective Harris leaned forward. Tell us everything, he said quietly. Reed took a deep breath. It started years ago, he began. Before Riverside, I worked in the city part of a task force investigating stolen antiques. That's where I met Collins. He wasn't Mr. Collins. Back then, his name was Arthur Cole. He was part of a group smuggling valuable artifacts out of museums. But when things went wrong, He vanished, changed his name, moved here. Emma felt her skin prickle. So he wasn't the innocent shopkeeper everyone thought? Reed shook his head. No, but he wasn't evil either. He turned himself around, tried to start fresh. I found him years later, purely by accident. I was torn. I wanted to arrest him, but he begged me not to. Said he'd left that life behind. I believed him until Harris asked, until I learned one of those stolen pieces resurfaced. Reed said, a jeweled pocket watch, priceless and dangerous. People were willing to kill for it. I came here that night to confront him. We argued. I didn't mean to hurt him, but he hit his head. I panicked. I thought if I made it look like a robbery, no one would find out. Emma's heart ached. And Daniel, she whispered. Reed's voice broke. He saw me leave. I didn't realize he was watching. That's why he ran. He thought I killed his father deliberately. Detective Harris stood slowly. Mr. Collins is still alive, he said. You have a chance to face him and the truth. Reed nodded, tears filling his eyes. Maybe it's time. As he was led away, Emma looked at the evidence on the table, the photo, the silver button, the letters. Every object had told a part of the story, like pieces of a broken mirror reflecting guilt, love, and redemption. Outside, dawn began to rise over Riverside. The quiet town would never be the same again. But for the first time in days, the light felt honest. If you enjoyed unraveling this mystery with me, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a gripping story. And comment below, what would you have done if you were Emma? Share your thoughts and join the conversation because every clue, every choice could change the story.